Welcome to episode 29 of the Goldenberg Destiny Project. Towards the end of the life of David HaMelech, the issue of succession came up very much, and there were different pretenders. I'm not going to get into all of this. You could open up a Tanakh and read all the details. There was Avshalom, and there was Adonio, and these other sons of his that pretended to the throne. And Shlomo at that time, who was the successor, was only 12 years old when David HaMelech was nifter. So David HaMelech had promised Bathsheba that Shlomo would be the successor. So toward the end of his life, she convinced him to make a public announcement that Shlomo was his successor. And she did. So when he was nifter, Shlomo became the king. Now, Shlomo was different from his father. David HaMelech was, they were both big tzaddikim. They were both Nevi'im. They were both of the custodians of the Torah in the transmission of the Torah and the Messiah. David HaMelech was, and his Sanhedrin was the Baal Messiah, and Shlomo was after him. So both of them were similar in this. But as far as their personalities was concerned, they were different. David HaMelech was a passionate person. He was, he had tremendous love for the Rebbeinu Shalom, not that Shlomo didn't. And when they were dancing in the street, when they brought the Aron, so he was dancing and his shirt opened, and he was just all out. He was full of passion, and his wife Michal was really upset about this. She felt it was a lack of decorum. But no, in Chachma v'Tfuna, when it comes to dancing for the Rebbeinu Shalom, it doesn't matter. He was like, that's what he was. And Shlomo Melech was more cerebral. He was more into Chachma, and he wrote Koheles, which is very deep Chachma. He wrote Mishlei. He wrote Shir Hashirim. He wrote these things that were very cerebral, very intellectual, and they also had a side of it like Shir Hashirim had in it a great love and a passion for the Rebbeinu Shalom. But overall, he was a cerebral person. The first thing that he did when he became king was to build the Beis HaMikdash. David HaMelech did not have the schus of building the Beis HaMikdash because he was a man of war, and he had killed many people on the battlefield, and of course it was fully righteous, and there was nothing wrong with what he did. He was fighting for the country, but God told him that because you have blood on your hands, even though you didn't do anything wrong with that, you cannot build a house, because the house is a house of peace. And if you have blood on your hands, you can't do it. But he did buy the property where the Beis HaMikdash was built, and Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash. He built it with the help of Hiram Melech Tzur. That's in where Lebanon is today. There's something called Phoenicia. There was ancient times called Phoenicia, and Phoenicia was populated by a Canaanite tribe. They were called the Tsidonim, and there's a city called Sidon, I guess that's, and the main city, there were two main cities, Sidon and Tzur, Tyre. And Hiram was the king of Tzur, Hiram Melech Tzur, and he had a friendship with David HaMelech. He sent him cedars to build his palace, and that friendship continued with Shlomo, and Hiram sent Shlomo also workers and cedars and many things. He helped him build the Beis HaMikdash. And the Beis HaMikdash was a phenomenal accomplishment. It was the place where the divine presence can rest in this world. It was before the Shekhinah was also in the world, in the Mishkan. There was, at times there was a small Mishkan, a temporary Mishkan in Gilgal, and afterwards in Nova Givon. In Shiloh there was a stone structure, so it was more permanent, but it was also only, in the grand scheme of things, it was also only temporary until the magnificent Beis Hamikdash was built, and it became like a wonder of the world. And people came from all over, and the Shlomo davened, he prayed to God that when non-Jews come to the Beis Hamikdash, their prayers should be answered, because that would be the covet for Hashem. And if a Jew comes, it's not that important, because, of course, we want the prayers to be answered, but it's not so critical that the prayers could be answered, because really you're coming there just to connect with Him, to connect with God, and to worship Him. But when a non-Jew comes, he's practical. He's coming, he wants tachlis. He wants, I need this, I need that, I'm going here, and I want it, and they should get it. And this was, there were many stories in the Tanakh with the Queen of Sheba, but I'm not going to get into all of these over here. But the relationship of Shlomo and Hiram became actually an alliance, that they became, and together, the Shlomo was the king of a very large, I don't know if I call it empire, but the borders had been very much expanded during David's time, and he was probably like one of the dominant figures in the imperial quadrant. He was maybe the most dominant figure in the imperial quadrant, and especially because of his alliance with Hiram. Their alliance was an economic alliance. Hiram had he had materials and resources, but he could not reach like East Africa or Asia, because he had no access to those seas. Because in those days there was no Suez Canal. So how could you get from Phoenicia? If you wanted to go to East Africa, you had to go out through Gibraltar, go all the way around Africa, come back around the bottom. Maybe some people did it or not, but it was not a way that was practical on a large scale. But Shlomo had access through the southern end of Israel, Etzion Gover, that's like where Eilat is today, which is on the Gulf of Aqaba, which leads into the Red Sea. So, and then you can go straight out, and you're like right near Asia, right near Africa, and there's a lot of trade there. You could bring valuables from there, and you could sell your materials to there, so you could get very rich from that kind of a trade. So Shlomo, Israel, was very powerful. They had a large army, even though they never fought in Shlomo's time. There were no wars in Shlomo's time. They never fought. But he had an army, he had a cavalry, he made like numerous iron chariots, he had many lands that were incorporated into Israel. There was a lot of wealth coming in to Israel from the outlying districts and tributary, and also from people that came to the Beis Hamikdash. So there was a lot of money coming in, and there was a lot of power there. And the Phoenicians were very good traders. So they had, going through Israel, they had access to the Etzion. They built this port, Etzion Gover, and from there they went and traded all over the Indian Ocean, and East Africa. They went. I don't know how far they went. I mean, they probably got to India. They brought back all kinds of valuables like jewels and monkeys. There was monkeys. Who in the Mediterranean basin ever saw a monkey? So I guess if you come back with a monkey, you could charge a lot of money for it. So they were able together to build a large mercantile empire which really dominated the imperial quadrant. And Phoenicia, they both became very rich from it. And Phoenicia became became wealthy, and they used this wealth to expand their influence all around the Mediterranean bases. They built trading ports in Carthage. They built the city of Carthage. We're going to get to it in a little bit later when we get to the Roman times. But they built the city of Carthage. Carthage is really a Canaanite word. It's Karta Chadash, new city. So they built the city Carthage. They built in Marseille. They built a trading post in the south of France. They built on the west coast of Spain. In Cadiz, they built a trading post, and they became a very powerful economic power. And Israel also became, together they were very powerful. So that was one of the ways that Shlomo became a dominant figure. There's also another way. He also, in those days, and also not maybe in recent centuries, if there was a treaty between two countries, then that treaty was sealed with a marriage. One of the princes from this country would marry either the king or the king's son, or somehow a marriage would seal this. In later European history, you find a lot of this, in maybe 300-400 years ago, or even maybe 200 years ago. You find that marriages sealed treaties. So Shlomo made treaties with many powers all the way around Israel. Some of them were major, some of them were minor. They could have been like a small city-state that had, a little king of a city-state, and he married 300 women and 700 concubines. So that means 300 were fully married to him, and the concubine is a lesser degree of marriage, but it's also a form of marriage. So he ended up with 1,000 wives. And by having, it's pretty mind-boggling, but he had 1,000 wives. And through these 1,000 wives, he had alliances with just about everybody in the area. So that also gave him tremendous power. Everybody was loyal to him because he was a mechutin. And so he had this big, broad range of alliances. But, so these 1,000 women, most of them, practically all of them, came from pagan societies. And when he married them, he converted them. The Gemara says that he converted them. He gave them a certain amount of instruction, and they all accepted that in order to be married to the king, they have to accept his religion, and they learned the mitzvahs and what they have to do. And they said, yeah, we're good with that, and yeah. But then, once he married all these women, he did not pay enough attention to them. He just, they were all ensconced in these royal palaces, these 1,000 women, and they were left to their own devices, basically. There was no continuing education. They were there, fine. They were converts, they were there, stayed there, and, keep a low profile, stay there. But what happened after a while is that their old pagan tendencies came out, and before long, these palaces where they lived, they were reeking with burning incense to just about every pagan god. Tremendous amount of idolatry was going on in these palaces among Shlomo's wives. And the Talmud, the pasuk says, I'm going to read you, not the pasuk, I'll read you the translation, that this was written by Yirmiyah, by the prophet Jeremiah. He wrote the book of Kings. So it says like this: when Shlomo grew old, his wives persuaded him to follow alien gods. He was not loyal to God, his Lord, as his father David had been. Then Shlomo built an altar to Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, which means the idol of Moav. On the mountain facing Yerushalayim, he built a bama. He built a mizbeach to Chemosh, some kind of a pagan god, and to Molech, the god of Ammon. And he did the same for all his foreign wives who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. This is what he did. It's incredible. I mean, if you take out the Tanakh and you read it, you think that he lost his mind. How could he do this? I mean, this is Shlomo, who was considered the Chacham Mikol Adam, the wisest person that ever lived. A tremendous intellect. I mean, it's like he was able to understand things that no other person could understand. And when he became older, when he grew old, he lost his marbles. How could it be? So the Gemara says, of course he didn't. Then the Gemara proves that. Whoever says that Shlomo sinned, he's making a mistake. And the Gemara proves it, because it says that he was not as loyal to God as his father David had been. Okay, he wasn't at the level of David, who was like beyond, but Chata, certainly not. He was not a sinner. So what does this mean? And this is how you have to understand how to read Tanakh. If you take some things out of context, then you could make very major mistakes. What the Gemara is saying is that he should have protested. Now, why didn't he protest? And therefore, the prophet Yirmiyah chastises him. It's as if you did it, he says. All this was going on, and you were oblivious to it. Why were you oblivious? You should have thought that you have all these 1,000 women. You should take care of them. You should have checked up on them, had your people check up on them, give them classes, do something. No, you just married them and taught them and converted them, and you put them in the palace, and then you went off to your ivory tower and sitting there and writing Shir HaShirim with your great love for God, and writing Koheles with your profound understanding of the human condition. But what's with all these women that you brought in here? What's with all those? You just forgot about them, you're oblivious to them, and this is what happened, and it's all your responsibility. So now, one of the women that he married was the daughter of Parai, Bas Parai, and he was the king of Egypt at that time, and he was also a powerful king, and he also wanted an alliance with Shlomo. So he went there, he conquered the city of Gezer, I think, and he gave this as a wedding gift to Shlomo. He should marry Bas Parai. And when he married her, so it says, she played instruments for him, she played music for him, and she told him, this is the song that we play for this God, and this is the song that we play for that God. And he didn't do anything. He didn't say anything. He just, why didn't he? Maybe he thought that it's not the time. Let her first get used to it, let her acclimate. Or maybe he thought she doesn't mean it, and the Gemara says that when Shlomo married Bas Parai, the daughter of Parai, the Malach Gabriel came down and drove a reed into the Mediterranean Sea. He put a corner to the Mediterranean Sea, and on this reed, the great city of Rome grew up. That this was the beginning of Rome. Now, if in the earlier episode, I think is number 17, we spoke about the relationship between Yaakov and Esav. Rome is the descendant of Esav. And when he asked Yitzchak for a bracha, so Yitzchak told him that you will be the adversary. When Yaakov goes down, you will go up. This was considered Yaakov going down. This was a failure of the Jewish people, and it started at this point, and it would lead eventually to the disintegration of the Jewish kingdom. And therefore, with the beginning of the disintegration of Yaakov is the beginning of the rise of Rome, who is the antagonist of Yaakov. Now, why was this considered, Shlomo made a mistake. The Pasuk, Al Tamim Ba'atzmacha, don't trust yourself. The Torah said don't marry too many women, and he thought that, I'm at a higher level, so I can marry because they will turn you. And he said, no, I can handle this. I can marry so many women, and I won't be turned. And in fact, he was turned, not actually towards sinning and becoming an idolater, but having a failure, that he took a risk and he failed. Now, this risk that he took, this failure, it seems to be that it was his personal failure. He should have been careful. He shouldn't have been oblivious to the people, to the women in the palace, and he was oblivious to them. So this is a personal thing. Why is this considered the beginning of the downfall of the Jewish kingdom? So I think that, he was oblivious. He was oblivious. But there were other people that knew what was going on. Plenty of people going in and out of those palaces and everything. They knew what was going on. And nobody came to Shlomo and said, knock on your door. You're sitting here in your ivory tower and you're writing your beautiful manuscripts. You know what's going on in your palaces? But nobody did. Nobody did. Why not? Because they figured, okay, he's letting it happen. Why should I get involved? Which was a sign of a tremendous malaise in Klal Yisrael, a descent in the spiritual level, that they could see something like this and tolerate it and not run to the king and protest. So God told Shlomo, because of this, I'm going to take away the kingdom from you. But I will leave you Yehuda. You will still be the king of Yehuda, but the rest of the kingdom I will tear asunder from you. And you will, the house of David, the Davidic dynasty, that you are the second king in this line, that will now be reduced to a very small area, and the rest of it is going to be torn away from you. And this took place not during his life, after he died. Then Rechavam replaced him, and Yeravam became the king of the others, and we will discuss these in the next episode. Thank you very much. I'd like to invite you to visit me at RabbiReinman.com and explore all my works, both completed and still in progress, and kindly take the opportunity to lend your support on the participant page. Thank you very much, and be well.